As the thumbnail says, we're under the car today to address that P0440 code or the P0442 code for the Evap system. So that code is for that canister that goes to the top of the gas tank that actually vents the gas tank and provides pressure to the overall Evap system. In order to do that correctly, you actually have to drop the gas tank to access everything. Unlike all those videos that you're gonna find on YouTube and all those posts that you see people doing where they're actually using a grinder to cut the inside of the car to access it, we're actually gonna do it the right way today. So stay tuned. For this project, to get rid of the P0440, the main thing you need is this valve right here. This is the most common thing that deteriorates over time and it ends up cracking and leaks and you don't get a good pressure. That's how you get that code. So you'll need this valve. You'll need the gas that goes with it, which is 2 different part numbers. I'll list all this down in the description if you guys need links to these things. Check out the description box. While I'm in there, I'm gonna go ahead and replace this valve right here. So this is another valve that goes into the Evap canister in the back. So this thing is on top of the tank also, so we'll go ahead and replace this thing while we're in there. And then the other end basically plugs into that Evap canister that's in your trunk. So this part number is right here, the valve assembly for that. And then you need, in addition to that, you need the gasket for it, which is this right here. And this is actually a shared Subaru and Toyota number right there. I'm gonna go ahead and just replace the gas cap for good measure. This thing was like $20 or $25 from the dealer, brand new. So I'm gonna go replace that. Make sure that we fix everything for that code P0440. All right, before we drop the tank, we have to go under the seat here, unplug both sides. I think there's fuel pumps and fuel line connectors on both sides of the tank or under the seat here. In order to take the seat out, we have to release, I think there's 4 12mm screws behind the seat here. So you want to lift this thing back here, look for them down there. There's a 12 or a 14, I believe it's 12. And once you get those 12 nuts and screws off, this whole seat assembly can come off and you can access the tank and the connectors. All right, now that we're in here with the seat off, it came off pretty easily once you got those 4 bolts out. So you just put your tool straight through the seat. There's 2 holes on each side for the car seat anchors. So you just stick it in there and take these things off right here and the bolt right there. So once you get those bolts off, you just pull your seat up from here because the tab actually pushes down in there in this yellow thing, that's the compression. So just pull up on the seat and it snaps right out. We want to go ahead and take these covers off right here. There's little 10mm plastic nuts on each side. Take those off and then undo the connections on the inside. So on the passenger side, this plug came off pretty easily. Once you take those 2 10mm nuts off, it just pops right off right there. You can see that plug. It's a simple press in and snap off. On the other side, it was a little bit harder since it has a fuel line on it. So this side was a little bit more difficult. Both the electrical connector and the fuel line was a little bit hard to take off. So the electrical connector, you have to kind of wiggle it and move it around and undo that clip right there, and it pops right off. The bottom side of it was what clips it in right there. You just press the top here really hard, make sure you don't snap it or break it. For the fuel line, there's this yellow clip right here that you just slide that way along that little white thing right there. You slide that way. Once you clear it out of there, you just pop the whole thing out and then the fuel line comes right off. Just make sure you steer clear of it in case there's some kind of pressure and the fuel sprays at you or anything. But over here, it's pretty good. We just want to wipe this up clean, maybe cap that off so you can get some of the fuel smell out of here. And then we'll go ahead and drop the tank. Okay, so now that we've got everything unbolted from the top, we're back under the car now. And what we need to do under here is basically take apart the exhaust. We need to take apart the rear half of the exhaust and then the midsection here up to this point right here, and take that all down so we can actually drop the tank. And once we get in there, we gotta take apart all these plastics, all this other stuff around here, actually take out that drive axle. So we need to go ahead and unbolt the drive axle from the differential. You can unbolt these 2 things right here that hold it to the frame and then pull it out of the transmission. You probably need to take apart this little thing right here and all this other stuff too, just to get it out of the way. Once you have that clear, we want to do the parking brake. So we need to undo the parking brake right up there into the car, and then undo it from here and take the cables down so they don't get in the way when we're trying to drop this tank. Once that's all done, the last two things is to kind of do all these little bars right here on the side, on both sides, and then the two straps that hold the tank on. That pretty much will allow us to drop the tank. What I'm going to do when I get to that point is put my actual utility cart under here and maybe lower the car down from the lift, and that way I can get it out and down to that thing and just kind of wiggle all the hoses so I can unplug them. The advantage I have right now is I actually have a lift in my garage to do this. If you were doing this at home or on jack stands, you might need some more help and you can't be doing it by yourself like I can. But even so, just make sure that your tank is actually empty. Do not do this when your gas tank is full, because you're going to be spending a lot of freaking time trying to hold that tank up and balance it on some jack stands. So I'll go ahead and unbolt all these panels and start taking everything apart on a time lapse. If I find anything interesting or anything hard, I'll stop and show you guys and explain what I'm doing. Okay, we were able to remove the drive axle. There was a little bit of transmission fluid leak, so I ended up putting a glove over that just to keep it from leaking too much while I'm working under here. But now that we've got the drive axle and got everything else out, we're gonna go ahead and undo the brake line right here. So in order to get this out, you just kind of turn it sideways, and there's a little slit up top, so you can undo the cable right here. You can leave that front half and everything up there, and then we're gonna unbolt it back here. And then around the corner here by the differential, just unbolt that and just tuck this cable onto the backside behind the differential, so that way we could drop the tank pretty easily. After that, we just need to undo these bars right here on both sides and then lower the straps. Before we drop the tank, we're gonna have to undo a couple of hoses that connect to the back of the tank or the top of the tank. So the first hose we gotta get is this big one right here. It's this guy. It's like a plastic hose that snaps in with a fitting right there. So that one's probably the hardest one. Then the second one is this one right above here, which is the same one that we're gonna be replacing on that tip over valve that we have to replace. It's that one that has a little white thing right there, so we gotta undo that and pull it apart. And over on this side, you can see two little clamps right there, this one right here and then another one right there. We gotta undo those two that go into the tank. So those are the four little hoses that we have to do, and then the main one we have to do is the fill hoses right here. It drops down and there's like a generic looking hose clamp that you can reach with a screwdriver once you drop the tank a little bit. So we have to undo that, and the tank should drop once we do that with all the hoses. Hot damn, I've spent the last hour or so trying to get that freaking connector apart right there, which is a big ass pain in the ass. So you can see that connector right there, it's a compression fit right in. What you need to do is squeeze both sides at the very end there on the outsides, and it releases the clip that goes around that little lip or round part on the ring. And that thing was a big pain. I pretty much mangled it trying to get it out. But once I get it back in there, I'll probably have to put a tie wrap around the diameter of it just to hold it in so that thing doesn't come loose again after I mangled it and kind of broke one of those little things on the end there. But that was a big pain. I was able to slide the other connector or the other hose out on this side. Back over here, I was able to loosen it and just take apart the hose clamp right there. So it's spinning inside the hose, but I still haven't slipped it off of there yet. I'm gonna try to slip it off, but if I can't, I'll just go ahead and lower it and then try to do it when the tank's a little bit lower. Alright, this is definitely a job that you need a lift for or a lot of help from some friends, because yeah, this thing is sketch. Right now I've got it down, it's sitting on the locks and it's sitting right onto here. I had to put a couple pieces of wood across here just to hold the tank, but now the only thing holding it is the fuel hose, which I could actually see that little hose clamp right there. So I'm gonna go ahead and undo that hose clamp and then wiggle that out, and then the tank should be loose and sitting on this thing right now, because I think it is sitting right here. It's freely sitting on here right now, so I just need to release that part and I should be able to lift the car back up and the tank will stay. But this is gonna be interesting trying to get this baby back in. Alright, after fumbling around with that thing, we got it down and everything looks nice and clean coming down. I'm gonna go ahead and clean this up all off camera before I open it up to do any work. So here are the hoses that you have to deal with when you take it out. So these two hoses were on that side that were a little bit hard to slide off, but eventually they do slide off. I think I was able to get this one off first, and then this one I had to move the tank down a little bit just to get some wiggle room to pull this guy out. So we've got both of these babies out. They were pretty easy. You can move most of these clamps with your fingers and just slide it back. This one was somewhat easy also. It's a little bit tight to get to, but if you got small hands, you should be able to reach up there and pull that out. So this thing is part of this valve that I'm gonna be replacing anyways, so I didn't really care about that. So this hose right here was a big pain, and you can see right there that clip kind of got mangled up when I was trying to get it out. But what you need to do is just squeeze this thing really hard. You got to squeeze it really hard, and it's designed to just release and push back, and then you can slide it off that little lip on the actual nipple thing on the other end. But this thing is nice and tight, but it's still usable. I mangled it up a little bit just getting my screwdriver in there to try to pry it out. You want to grease up that O-ring inside a little bit before you put it back in with some silicone grease and get it all back together. Ideally I should have just ordered another one of these hoses, but I didn't think about it. That would have been easy to do. It probably was cheap to that hose, because on this side it pops out too the same way, but since this is out already, it should be pretty easy with two hands to pop that out. Other than that, I'm just gonna clean up some of the surface rust, probably hit it with some spray paint as I clean it off camera, just to make sure I get everything back on these inaccessible areas that I'm never probably gonna deal with again in my life, at least with this car. So I'm gonna go ahead and just take all care of all that. Another tip before you take it out, this spot right here is actually got a clip on the actual body, and it clips both hoses, so that gets stuck. That was the final thing that got stuck when I was trying to pull it down, so I had to pop that out last minute. I ended up kind of breaking that clip, and I'll show you on the other end what it looks like. So underneath is all the way up there, right there. That's where that clip is. That's where I broke half of it trying to get it out. It's actually held on by a little stud that it slides into. There's really no easy way to pull it off without breaking it. Not really important at the end of the day, because the hose does tuck above that black thing right there, so it's really out of the way anyways. So here's what everything looks like underneath here when there's no fuel tank in here, with the differential, the subframe, and all these little areas here. So this is probably a good time to just do a little bit of touch up on any kind of surface rust or anything. I'm gonna go ahead and clean all this up, hit it with some black spray paint just to get it cleaned up again. Maybe replace this 10mm, clean up some of these little spots right here, and just hit it with some touch up just so rust doesn't spread. Remember, this was a Virginia car for about half its life, so it does have a little bit of surface rust here and there. I was able to clean it up with some super clean, brush all those edges right there with the rust, the surface rust off, to get it pretty good for the spray paint. So I'm gonna go ahead and push this outside, spray paint it off camera, let it dry, and then we'll get back to it. All right, I was able to paint everything off camera, got everything cleaned up, all the rust off. As I was getting done painting everything, I noticed some of these things were coming off right here. These are the protector pads that go up against the actual chassis under the car. A few of them were stuck to the chassis and eventually fell off. So I took them down and actually glued them back with some 3M adhesive right here just to get them all to stick. Even the ones that were still on the tank were all lifting, so I just hit them up with a little bit more adhesive so they would hold when we get back up there. So we'll go ahead and take the thing off now and swap out the new canister and the new rollover or overfill valve right here. So we're gonna go ahead and take apart this top cover right here by removing all these screws, and then we'll get the hoses off. So the easiest way to take these screws off, even though they're Phillips heads, is use an 8mm so you don't end up stripping these if they're on too tight. So I just use an 8mm on my drill just to shoot them off. We'll go ahead and shoot the top cover off first. Once you take those three that take the top cover off, you take that out. Once we're in here, you'll see this hose right here and the hose clamp. You should be able to turn this hose clamp or pull it off with your hand. Notice the markings on there. There's white markings for the top. So just make sure you orient the top of it with the new one. Use some pliers or something to loosen it from the plastic here. You just want to turn it slightly just to loosen it. Once you loosen it, it should slide right out. There. So we put this hose aside. We're going to reuse that again. Then we're going to go ahead and take the other three that take this main thing off. But before we do that, we'll just actually pop this hose right here off. So this is the pain in the ass hose, especially on the other end when you're trying to remove it from the car's canister. So in order to open this, there's actually two little tabs right here on the side. So you want to push it in as far as you can. Press these tabs and they kind of move the clips out. And then once you do that, you just slide it right out and it comes right out pretty easily there. These things usually have been on there for like 20 years, so they're kind of tight. So you can always just twist it back and forth to loosen it a little bit if it's hard. See, the back one on the other side was a pain in the ass. But once you get it out, just lube it up with some silicone grease, because we're gonna have to reuse it again, and it should slide right in and off pretty easily. So we'll go ahead and take these three off. So just make sure you pay attention to orientation. There's really no markers or anything on here. So this thing comes apart, just remove it from the metal piece. And then there's a gasket right here. Just make sure that it's not on there and it comes off with it. My gasket's a little bit cracking already. You guys, I can see it from the oldness of this rubber on the original one. So we'll go ahead and take that on. We're gonna go ahead and pull out the new gasket right here on the new one. Put it onto the new valve. The gasket doesn't have any kind of orientation. It just goes in one way or the other. Just put it on there. Put it back in here. Get this piece. If it's still dirty, just make sure you wipe it down before you put it back in. This is 20 years with the dirt on here. So we want to go, this thing has a little notch right there. Just line that up with the tube. Again, we're going to get this back in the same orientation it was before. Make sure nothing's really touching or anything. Go ahead and hand screw in the 3 screws that don't hold the top cover on, just the ring. You want to hand screw these on so you don't cross thread them by accident. We'll go ahead and put this hose back on first. So this one, you just slide it right in, all the way in. Make sure the white markings are there, and put the old clamp back the same orientation. And then this other one right here, just snap this off. What we want to do on this one is put a little bit of silicone grease. This is just some general purpose silicone grease I have around the garage. Just dip a little bit of it. Just want to coat that O-ring in the little opening so it slides in easy. Then we want to get back in here, make sure you have your correct orientation. This thing does come in like at a little angle onto the thing. It snaps right in. So we're good with this piece. I'm gonna go ahead and replace this part right now. This is that overfill valve. All right, I cleaned up the top of this thing, and as you can see in the reflection of the light right there, right around the top rim right here, between the thing, you can see that hairline crack that's developing, and that's what causes this thing to leak and cause the check engine light. So you can see this thing causes 99.9% of all the P0440 issues on this car, and it's a very hard fix, but we're doing it the correct way and not cutting a hole in the floor like some of these people and all these YouTube videos that you guys are seeing online on DIY. Hopefully you guys found this one for doing it the correct way, even though it's the hard way. All right, so the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and replace the overfill valve here. So you saw earlier when I was showing you the part, the overfill valve actually comes with the hose assembly and everything complete with the valve itself. So we just go ahead, I'm gonna leave this in with the plastic on it while I'm doing the install, but this thing's also black now because I painted it when I was doing it earlier. All right, got 2 screwdrivers now. Get it under the lip. Opposite ends. There we go, feel it. This thing had a new gasket also. So go ahead, take the old gasket out, put that new one that I had, I was showing you guys earlier. Anytime you guys, there's a gasket, you always have to replace the gasket. All right, back in nicely, make sure everything clears. Tank kind of lined up right now, so I actually have to lower the car down. Like I said earlier, luckily I have a lift for this. If you guys are doing this on the floor on your back, you'd need a couple of hydro jacks and some help trying to get this thing back up, but I'm gonna just get it as close as I can. The main thing we need to tuck in is the back side here, past the differential. Once we do that, tuck all the hoses up, then we can pretty much maneuver it in place, get the straps up, and then bolt it up and kind of realign everything once we get the straps kind of in place. I got it down on one of the lift lock positions, locked in right now. Just trying to make sure everything's lined up, all the hoses are clear. Then I'm gonna go ahead, lift it up again, go down to the next lock position, see if I get the tank perfectly in place, and then I'm gonna lower it down one more lock position. All right, the last part I was trying to get this fuel filler hose in. It was a pain in the ass to try to get it in here without slipping out onto the tank. So what I did was I unhooked it from the actual neck up top there behind the suspension. That way I could tighten it down here and have it loose. Once I tighten it up and get everything up in there, I could grab it and then try to get it right through up here, which is much easier to access than it is with the tank in the way. So we were able to just put those 2 support straps right there to hold it up, and then now I can actually lift it up. Now everything's up in place with those 2 main support straps. That's the easiest way to access, and then now I can lift everything up, wiggle those bands in place, and then screw those things in. All right, we got everything snapped back in tight, got all that stuff in. Same with the hose clamp up here for the fuel line, and down here for those 2 right there that you plug in right there, and we're pretty much complete. Got all these things buttoned up right here as far as the bolts and everything go. For the straps, got everything back in, so made sure all the parts and everything were back where they belong. None of the hoses were touching or crimped or kinked or anything. Complete with this project. Hopefully that P0440 code doesn't come back. Hey guys, thanks for tuning all the way to the end of this video on getting this thing taken care of with the gas tank dropping and taking care of that evap system. As you can see, this is a big ass pain in the ass to do it correctly with it dropping the gas tank down, but it's not doing that okey doke half-ass that most of the guys are doing online with it cutting the seat and actually grinding it or doing whatever they're doing and then trying to seal it back with some tape. As you can see, dropping the gas tank is not really that hard as far as the number of bolts and everything goes. It's really that freaking hose and all that crap upstairs that you actually have to worry about and trying to get those hoses apart and reaching into there and getting everything out. I'm lucky that I have the luxury of having this lift to do this work, but if you're at home, I highly recommend, if you're gonna do this project, build some wheel cribs that are like 18 to 20 inches high using 2x4s, and that way you could put them on all four of your wheels and jack the car up. And then that way, when you're laying under it, you could put the jack stands and you could put other things underneath to help you drop the tank and then get it back up again. I've actually got some of those wheel cribs that I use when I want to get the car up higher. I actually lift the car up so I can put these little extensions here. That way I get another like 9 inches of lift on this max jack. If you guys found this video useful, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet to stay on top of all my different videos, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Turn on bell notifications to get notified every time I upload. Remember guys, for all these different projects, if I can do it, you guys can do it. I want to thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you guys next time.